So speaking of boosting, how could you possibly ever finish a program without addressing the new economy? And in the new economy here in New Jersey, part of that would be cannabis. And if I don't introduce Beau in the way that Kate wanted me to, she'd probably be bummed. So Beau, toke it away.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you, NJBIA, for hosting this event. As always, you people are wonderful for the New Jersey business community. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to discuss cannabis in the new economy, and honored today to present with such amazing people and experts in their fields. My name is Beau Huch. I'm of Counsel to Porzio Bromberg Newman, and I counsel cannabis clients on licensing generally and just about how this impacts everything nowadays. I'm also the director of Porzio Governmental Affairs, where I'm a Trenton-based lobbyist touching on a wide variety of subject matter. Prior to joining the private sector, I had the opportunity to work in state government for the better part of a decade. There I worked on policy for various legislators and spent a lot of time actually driving NJBIA nuts and Chris Emmelholtz nuts, and I apologize about that. I had the time of working with Senator O'Scanlan there for about 6 years, and he was the former minority budget leader, so we touched on a bit of everything in that committee. Both Declan and Chris are probably two of the brightest policy minds in the state, so NJBA is really lucky to have them. Now, we have a lot to cover, not a lot of time, so I'm going to give you guys a quick little history lesson, tell you where we are, or tell you where we've been, tell you where we are, then finish where I think we're going. So buckle up, we need to look back to look forward. I first got introduced to cannabis, just like everyone else in the room, in high school. I think I turned out fine. It's not the gateway drug my dare officer warned me about, and current research supports that statement. Working for Senator O'Scanlan, one of the bills our office was most proud of being a part of was Jay Koenig's law. This was also known as the Medical Marijuana Expansion Law. This bipartisan law tremendously increased access to the program and focused on the best interest of the patients. It laid the groundwork for our adult marijuana law. NJ's medical marijuana program was housed in our New Jersey Department of Health. This is important. Jay Koenig's law established our regulator, the CRC, to be formed. Eventually, that regulator took control of the ailing medical marijuana program and simultaneously came to govern the rules of the adult use cannabis industry. Most states have their cannabis marketplaces built on the back of a healthy medical marijuana program where the supply is ample. Unfortunately, two things would cripple the medical marijuana program's expansion here in New Jersey. 2019 litigation really slowed things down for more licenses. This wasn't resolved until February of 2021. The other thing that kind of slowed us all down was the pandemic. The adult use legislation was signed into law of February 2021. This bill was barely changed from a 2019 effort to legalize cannabis. Just think about that for a second. Borrowing heavily from Massachusetts law and policy, heavy on social justice, intended to crush the illicit market by driving prices low, a law absolutely necessary to halt cannabis arrest, undoubtedly the most important aspect of legalization. With the signing of this law, a big clarion call went out. This is everyone's chance to build generational wealth. People responded, many rushed into one of the most difficult industries on the planet. The law was admittedly imperfect by the legislature's own account. It was designed to get the little guy to market first. Under normal circumstances, this is a tremendous opportunity. However, a few big things happened between 2019 and 2021 that were not normal. In April of 2021, our regulator had its first meeting. The CRC was bare bones. The commissioners were aggressively trying to hire. Most of the normal lateral transfers you'd expect from the New Jersey Department of Health could not happen because those folks were, tied up with a pandemic. And under normal circumstances, civil service takes a good 6 months to a year to hire someone in New Jersey. So the New Jersey CRC's pickings for hirings were slim. When the law was signed, our 564 municipalities each had 180 days to determine whether or not they wanted to opt out. Those that opted in did so without getting to see the regulations. In New Jersey, each town has the ability to set their own rules as to how many of each of the 6 classes of licenses they'll permit in their town. We might as well have 564 states in New Jersey, all with an incredibly strong sense of home rule. It's also worth noting that the basics of the municipal land use law, like that timely 45-day shot clock, to keep the process moving along with any new business development, doesn't really apply in cannabis. You can also spot zone in cannabis. On August 19th of 2021, the CRC released its first set of regulations. This is actually lightning speed to get out regulations. Again, towns had to opt in or opt out before then. The adult use law included strong employee protections that could cause an employer to get easily sued by an employee or prospective employee if that employer engages the wrong way on cannabis, absent a strong drug and alcohol policy. The law also changed as to how police are allowed to investigate a minor suspected of being impaired. If an officer cites to the scent of cannabis for justifying their investigation of a suspect, it could be construed as a civil rights violation and result in the criminal charge of an official deprivation of civil rights. This charge carries a 3 to 5 year jail sentence and up to $15,000 in fines if convicted. It's fairly simple to bring this charge now if the scent is cited in the officer's stop and the suspect's arrest. So where are we now? Cannabis is still federally illegal. Unregulated hemp-derived psychoactive cannabinoids are sort of legal. This is thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill mess where Congress essentially and accidentally legalized a whole new vice. Unlike psychoactive hemp-derived products, there is no legal interstate commerce of psychoactive cannabis-derived products. There are still no normal banking safeguards and bankruptcy protections. Now, this is my favorite thing to do. A quick hypothetical for the crowd. You're the mayor or council person of a small town. A new law legalizing cannabis has been enacted with robust public support. There's promise of lots of tax revenue in years to come, but there's a few catches. You are being told by the police chief that they're afraid of their officers being criminally charged and having to defend against costly and frivolous allegations that could land your officers in jail. Simultaneously, your Chamber of Commerce, along with the town's largest employer, are losing their minds because they're saying they're afraid of getting sued by employees and potentially fined by the state. Both say that allowing a cannabis business in this town increases the probability of these concerns. You, as an elected official, have the option of permitting cannabis businesses in your town, but you are not allowed to see the regulations before having to make that decision. You're up for election in a year or so, and tax revenue won't be seen for at least several years. By a show of hands, would you opt in? I don't see one. Now, granted, some of the aforementioned concerns are a little hyperbolic. Cannabis under our law may be delivered into any town, to any residence. Your employees have been smoking weed for a very, very long time and figuring out how to do that even when you do have a drug and alcohol policy. You just have certain protections if you have that. However, as one might expect, few municipalities have opted in. Many towns have capped the various types of licenses they allow, many spot zoned. No municipality is getting this entirely right. Many towns are exposed to litigation by how they're handling local cannabis approvals. The municipal process is painfully slow and subjective. All this, as many people in the state the state intended to help build that generational wealth, are financially struggling to hang on because of the big system we created. Overall, about 71% of New Jersey's municipalities opted out prior to the deadline, with only a few handfuls of towns opting in afterwards. Again, just because a town opted in does not mean that they allow all cannabis types of licenses, nor many of those license types simultaneously. On the other hand, a few towns are free-for-alls with no caps, no process at all, and they're choosing just to let the free market sort things out. Towns have a lot of options in skinning this cat, but they really need to know how the different types of licenses work, and it's complicated. It's also worth noting this. The CRC, got to give them some credit here. They're the diamond in the rough. Don't blame the regulator. They're not perfect, but as far as most attorneys are concerned, they're pulling off a few miracles with the speed they're moving, considering the initial limited resources that they had. Their staff is working tirelessly and diligently within the confines of an imperfect law and an incredibly difficult market to get off the ground. They're creative, open suggestions whenever you can grab their ear. I really need to emphasize this. They have zero control over the municipal process, and this is the industry's biggest hurdle. So, to date, here are the numbers. About 1,600 various cannabis businesses have applied in New Jersey, and this is what's been submitted to the CRC. Of those applicants, there are only about 403 cultivators to supply 240 manufacturers and 893 retailers. Of these applicants, many just won't make it off the ground, again, due to finances and a lack of real estate. 80% of all these applicants applied as a conditional license, hoping that this would get them to market faster, because that's how the law was designed. Of the 80%, many applied as a micro license. Those are the ones with 2,500 square feet, no more than 10 employees. They have extreme geographic restrictions, having to live in or next to the town which they're applying to. It's really difficult to apply as a micro, but prioritized by the CRC's review again. The CRC has zero control as to the local approval. I can't stress that enough. If you applied as a conditional, your income is capped at $200,000 as a single filer as for your taxes and $400,000 jointly filing. You can raise capital, but it's hard. To get a small retail business off the ground, you need some business acumen to do so, and it could easily cost you $600,000 to $1 million. All of the submitted applications to date have started the review process by the CRC. As of this January, only 54 applications have yet to advance to completeness review and to get that CRC determination. More conditionals are applying to convert to annuals. This means that they could open up soon, but for perspective, 150 conditional conversions have been submitted to the state. We're about to see a few more of these businesses really pop up. So if you're one of those lucky business applicants to make it through the state and local gauntlets and get greenlit to go to market, you still have some pretty big hurdles. You need to be able to sell a product as a business, and you need to be able to distinguish your business with different products. This is worth mentioning. The rules for edibles and manufacturing have not come out yet, despite the RFA for that type of license going live. Currently, there are only 17 operational cultivators, with 6 of them being medical only. With a statewide canopy, that's the total amount of cannabis for the whole state, being 418,000 square feet of cannabis. That's not a lot. We even had a tornado take out one of our prospective mega cultivators early on that would have added an extra 100,000 square feet of capacity. NJ has not been lucky in production. As of April of 2022, the expected market capacity needed to satisfy our market was about 150,000 pounds to 240,000 pounds a year. Those estimates factor in tourism markets and markets from other states as well. 12% of the New Jersey residents are likely to be adult or medical consumers. The national average per adult use state is about 889 cultivator licenses. New Jersey would need another 850 more licenses to meet the national average of cultivation licenses. In other words, expect a lot more cultivation licenses to come online. More people will continue to apply for this type of license and the various types. And the CRC is showing no signs of slowing down this round of applications. They desperately need more. A few quick general notes on the present. Litigation involving municipalities. At least 10 towns that have opted in are currently being sued or have been. This is sometimes by overzealous anti-cannabis activists, sometimes by towns' arbitrary decision-making for local approvals and ignoring their own ordinances, because it's difficult to set that up if you're not familiar with the industry. Sometimes just errors in the local ordinances just because the town, again, didn't understand the process or the different license types as to how people can show up in their town. And a little bit of perspective, the Bar Association has now established an entire subcommittee on cannabis land use because this is getting so messy so fast. You're going to see more litigation, and we are currently seeing some litigation already starting involving workplace impairment recognition experts, also known as WIRES. We've talked about that a few times. One of the things the state did to protect employers was to allow something called a workplace impairment recognition expert, like a drug and alcohol recognition expert. This was intended to be a human resources officer that was a person simply able to detect cannabis and appropriately document suspected impairment with a degree of immunity. Most states' employee protections are normally caveat emptor. New Jersey is unique. Unfortunately, a 2019 legal challenge to the DRE program in New Jersey has yet to be resolved. So on workplace impairment recognition experts, New Jersey is going to be a very long time still. I expect at least another year. Now, I scream this regularly. The best way to protect yourselves as employers, update your policies, make sure your HR people know how it reads, have it vetted by counsel. Another really weird thing, and this is going to sound strange if you're not familiar with it, the 2018 Farm Bill mess. A small component of this massive federal law is essentially permits the interstate commerce of unregulated psychoactive hemp and hemp-derived cannabinoids. This is a big bill. It's kind of like the defense bill. It always gets passed no matter what. It's something that you'll basically see happen later on this summer as to being reauthorized. But a whole new boutique industry has popped up as far as isolating the psychoactives in CBD that's being sold interstate, and I can basically make THC Delta 9, is the stuff that normally gets you high, and sell it in a gas station. Just market as hemp, totally legal. So what to expect? This is a boom-bust industry followed by market stabilization. Remember, the price of cannabis might be $500 an ounce now, but the market is intended to create enough supply to cause a crash and a price below the illicit market. That market is currently about $250 an ounce last time I checked. Look what happened in Massachusetts, legal markets, this time about last year. The bottom fell out on pricing. The cannabis industry is really hard to get into. Again, many applicants will not make it off the ground due to financing, a lack of real estate, the slow process that towns bleeding them financially. Many applicants will sell their businesses, leading to market consolidation by the wealthy. You can have the best legal and consulting team in the world, but there's an aspect of luck and timing in this industry, particularly when municipalities can make the rules up as they go along. Expect more lawsuits. This is the type of industry where everybody sues everybody. Applicants are suing towns already. It's hard but not impossible, and I expect that to continue. And after a few towns take it on the chin, I expect other towns to stop the shenanigans, because shenanigans are abound. I would not be surprised if the state attorney general or the federal law enforcement ultimately opens up a few investigations into municipal governments. This has already happened in other states. Current employees or prospective employees will start to sue their employers, particularly those with weak drug and alcohol policies and a lack of understanding by their HR officers and how the law changed. It's already happening. We're tracking a few big cases as is. It's unlikely, but definitely not impossible. Criminal accusations against police officers for improper investigations on a parent. This is a fun one. And the insurance space, insurers will be contesting everything that's not airtight. Landlords might not be appropriately covered for the entire premises if they have a cannabis tenant. They need to be appropriately indemnified by contract, particularly in strip malls and shopping complexes. Insurers might boot them if there's a slip and fall in the parking lot from a cannabis customer, and the insurer finds out that the landlord is permitting this type of business. Consider that the law permits consumption lounges now that operate much like a brewery's tasting room. This is a great idea for normalization and destigmatizing, but it's a liability mess. Cannabis businesses that fail to keep up with their state and regulatory requirements, particularly security and OSHA rules, will be vulnerable to insurance rate increases and potentially a failure of coverage. The legal industry will see it shift itself. Law firms will shift away from licensing. Eventually, much of the cannabis industry begins to behave just like any other business in a highly regulated marketplace with normal business and legal needs, just with a weird cannabis twist. Again, there will be a strong need for compliance review, and particularly from a safety standpoint and a security standpoint. The cannabis industry will need the appropriate experts in this space. There's not many of them now. Those that know how to keep a business compliant, but also those that can do so while considering the cost of how to be compliant. Proper accounting and OSHA and a maintainable security plan is going to be everyone's #1 concern. And continued market volatility, because just because there's industry growth does not mean there's sustainable profits. Nationally, the industry is bleeding cash like you could not imagine. We will see bankruptcy on the back end, and until Congress fixes the Safe Banking Act, it's more of a receivership situation, which gets really weird. So I brought it down, I'll try to bring it back up again, some good news. There will be some serious state and tax, local revenue, exponential growth by the industry. Even if there is market consolidation, some businesses will fail, new ones will take their place. This revenue is almost a sure thing in time. More towns will opt in as aspects of the market stabilize and towns troubleshoot. Once they figure out their whole local process, other towns will replicate it. They'll appreciate the different license types allowed, and they'll mimic the best policy for the similar types of government. Likely more towns will opt in after more edibles and manufacturing rules come out, maybe this summer. This is because cannabis manufacturers could be in a town you'd never have any idea that they're there. Meanwhile, that's tremendous tax revenue for the town, and once they get a little taste of that, they usually want more. They'll start permitting other cannabis license types. Again, we don't have a lot of edibles because the CRC had to write those in conjunction with the Department of Health and a few other state agencies. Oh, I'm sorry, they're busy. Lastly, I've got to give a shout out to the legislature here. 280 decoupling, big thing. We can now have normal tax breaks for cannabis businesses. The legislature is beginning to actually look at doing a little bit more. So we'll see what happens there. Now, as a final point, no one's expecting any congressional action. There's a few push by legislators at the state level to fix some of these big hurdles these businesses have. But again, it's slow moving, and it's an election cycle, so we'll see what happens. Thank you all. I know I had a little extra time. Bye-bye.